All right, welcome to this week of Adobe Illustrator. We'll be going more in depth into text and formatting and all that fun stuff this week. So, the first thing that we're going to be talking about here is formatting text and some common text operations that we can have. Up here under the Type menu, you'll see we've got lots of choices here. The first thing is Add Fonts from Typekit. Um, that means that if I go out to Typekit, which is Adobe's font receptacle storage place, I can actually look for fonts and find some that I might like, um, and possibly download them to my computer. Some are free, some are not. Um, as far as being included with your Creative Cloud account. If you did not have a Creative Cloud account, then none of them would be free, as far as I know. And so that's where you can go for that. Font lets you pick out your fonts that you have, and you can see I have a bunch of them in here. The ones that say O are open tight. This looks like variations. VAR, that's kind of a newer thing. And then TT is true type fonts. They're a little bit older style of font and are not as compatible across um, computers and stuff like that. Uh, and you can see here that my computer allows me to have samples of each of these so that I can see what kind of font I'd be looking at here if I pick one of them. And I've gotten these fonts from all over the place. They're just kind of a mixture of random fonts here, but just be aware that they are here. And if you like this little preview thing and it's not turned on yours, you should be able to turn it on under your preferences, which are under Illustrator CC on the Mac and under Edit down at the bottom on the PC. So preferences and type. There you go. So in here, it's our default size / leading, tracking, baseline shift. You'll learn about all of those in a little bit. Language options, you can have some East Asian and Indic options. Object type selection by path only. Show font names in English. Auto size new area type. Number of recent fonts, 5. That was up at the top of the font menu there. That showed me, at the very top, it would have shown me the last 5 that I had used. Font preview. So that's that little preview of what the font is going to look like. It's script and that kind of thing. And then what size you want of that. So mine's on large. Enable missing glyph protection. Highlight substituted fonts. And fill new type objects with placeholder text. The highlight substituted fonts, you might have seen that on some of mine. I tried to make it happen for these here and it didn't pop up, so we might try it again. Where there'd kind of be a pink highlight color over some of my words, and that means that the font that was picked out was not one that was currently in my font folder. So it was kind of giving me an error on it and saying, hey, you should pick something else because you're not going to be able to see this properly. Let's see here. After font, we've got recent fonts, which is again just those top 5 that were picked there, and they're also the same 5 are right here. Below that we have size, which changes the size of your font. So for example, down here, if I was on this top complete text AV, I could go here and pick a font out, and it would change, and I could go to the one here, and I could pick a font size, and it would change. So I can modify my text from up here in the drop-down menu. We're going to skip a few of these and go down to check spelling. Where is the check spelling? Oh, it's under the edit menu. So I'm just going to select this so I have something highlighted. And here, check spelling. It'll actually start and go through and check some spelling items for you. As you can see here, it's not finding this word here because it is in Spanish. So nothing here is going to change that. However, if I went and I'm going to click done here, and I went to my character panel, which we'll get to a bit later also, but in the character panel, just so you're aware, it's a little bigger, it says English USA. So if I had picked Spanish here instead, in theory, and gone back over here and said check spelling and said start, it would give me options to fix it down here. So you can see it's giving me the little, it's pretty tiny for you guys, but over the I it's a little line instead of the dot. So to actually change it to the correct Spanish. Now it's trying it again. Oh, it's still in English here. Why is that? I switched it over to Spanish. Oh, it didn't stick. Hello? Spanish? Is it because I selected over here? Oh, let's pick this here. Say, trying this again. Spanish for that. Edit. Check spelling. Start. It's not finding that one. See, it's not giving me. Oh, there was a correct one right there. I did switch to Spanish. And it is giving me Spanish words here. It seems to be a little bit not as great as it used to be. I don't find correcting spelling in Illustrator to be a really fun thing. So if you are interested in having your spelling and all of the little accents on the words be correct, I would actually do it in Word. It actually will underline things for you. You can see what's wrong. You can fix it, all that kind of stuff, which is it's kind of a basic spelling editor in here. But it is available, but I would in general try to use a different one somewhere else and then bring your text in afterwards. Um, Find and replace. You can actually pick words, so I can pick the word complete and replace it with compote. And find and say replace and find, and then we'll check them all for me. So you can do a quick find and replace on words there if you need to. And then we also have something here called type show hidden characters. Where is that one? Here we go. And so these characters are the symbols for paragraph and enter and space. So if you're wondering how many spaces are between something, this is really great because it'll just show you the little single dot. Um, and if you have hit returns versus entire paragraphs, that kind of thing. I don't have a lot of cause to turn this on. I'm not doing a lot of aligning and kerning and letting for the spacing with the dots, but it is here and it is useful for some people if they are going to be into doing a lot of heavy word flyers or something like that. I'm going to turn this back off here and type change case. These are just the ones that are kind of ordered here right now. You can see here that I can pick, let's go grab this, type change case. I can pick uppercase, which makes it all uppercase. I can pick lowercase, which makes everything lowercase. Title case, which capitalizes the first letter of every word. And sentence case, which capitalizes the first letter of the sentence. So those are a couple common text operations that you might need. Now all of those are up there and more. You can see we've got other things here for area type, type on a path, converting to area type, glyphs. We're going to get to a bunch of this stuff in a little bit. Resolving missing fonts, punctuation, special characters, all this kind of stuff is up here in this menu. I don't go to this menu very often. What I do is I go over to the character panel. And again, I'm going to close this real quick. So window. These are the only panels that are not alphabetical here. They are down under type, and then they are alphabetical under that. So we've got character, character styles, glyphs, open type, paragraph, paragraph styles, and tabs. So we're going to go to character for now. This is the character panel. And you might see it like this, or like this, or like this. It's got 3 here. When it gets down to where it says what kind of language you're using and shows the anti-aliasing, then you know you're at the bottom of it. So you can also do that over here. When you hide options, it kind of cuts off the bottom part of it. And in the new properties panel over here on the right, you also have the top portion of this showing. You don't have the bottom show options part. If I clicked here, it would bring open the character panel kind of attached down here. All right. Let's see. So we're going to go through these different little pieces here. This top one here is to use the touch type tool. If you recall, the touch type tool is over here. That's the last tool at the bottom of the type tools. So this is just another way to access it. You can click here, and all of a sudden I'm on my touch type tools, and I can move these around and rotate it and whatever I need to do. Turn it back off. Just I don't know, click off of it. We've got our fonts here. So again, this is all the same stuff that was up here under the type menu. So I can choose different fonts. You can see as I cross over it, it will actually change it over here on the screen as well. It didn't used to do that, and I have these open here so I can see it over here at the same time. Underneath that, we have the font styles, and these will change with each font. This particular font, Advent Pro, has thin, extra light, light, regular, medium, semi-bold, and bold. This font right below it here, Myriad Pro, has condensed, condensed italic, bold, condensed italic, light, light italic, irregular, italic, semi-bold, whoops, semi-bold, semi-bold italic, bold, bold italic, black, and black italic. So lots of choices for this one. Some of them have no choices, so it just kind of depends. Especially the true type fonts, they tend to not have as many depending on where you got them from. Um, so there are different kinds of options. Each of these also, when you hold over, it's going to tell you what these things are. So you see set font style, set font family, set font size. So if you're kind of lost as to what something does before it does it, you can just come hover over it and it will tell you. So this is currently at 86 point. I can change that up and down. This little menu only goes up to 72, but you can type in whatever you want up here. Once you get past a certain point, it is going to be kind of a fake size. Uh, so just be aware of that. But some of the, if I type in 300 point, it might not actually be 300 point. You might start to get some kind of blur on it depending on the type of font that it is. And let's see, this was like an 80 something. We'll put it there, 72. This one next to it here is called the leading. This is how far apart it is from the next one. So leading is right here. Let's zoom in on these. So I could have done these in the kind of order they have, but that's all right. So leading is how far apart these lines are from each other. So the higher the leading, the further apart they are. Auto is a default. It's a percentage of whatever point type you have picked. So as a 12-point font, it would be 14.4. As because it's 120% of the font size. And it's a common word processing analogy would be kind of single and double spacing. This obviously can go in many different kinds of spacing, but it is there for it. Also, on all these things, we've got these drop downs, but we also have these little nudge up and down arrows, so I can move things around that way as well. The next thing here is kerning, and that one was back up top here with these. Let me undo back to these being the same. So we want to see how kerning works. If I'm on my selection tool, I can just double click on here and you'll see that it automatically switched me over to the text tool, the type tool. So now I'm in between these. Kerning is the space between two characters. So right now I can actually pick. So if you see that I narrowed that one up to negative 50%, this next one here, go 50%. If you are just selected on this, like so, you can see this is blanked out because I've chosen different options for each one. And come on, say okay. Why is this locking up on me? There we go. You'll see all. Oh my gosh. You'll see all the rest of these are grayed out. Oh my gosh. This is doesn't usually do this. If I can hold this long enough, they're grayed out because I'm not selected in between them. This isn't for a whole word or a whole paragraph. It is for individual spacing between them. So I want to be back in here, and as soon as you're between them, then you can choose something. And just to bring things into alignment, sometimes you'll see like this space here might look bigger to you than that space, so you can just eyeball them and nudge them around a bit. This one next to it here is the tracking, and I'm going to come down here to this one, select this, and you'll see here that it's letting me choose all these. The tracking is how far apart the letters are from each other as a whole. So I might do this and you might see that some letters look a little bit off. They might look further apart than other ones, so I might have to go back in and use, click off, over here, the kerning between individual characters to adjust some of it, but mostly I'm just using the tracking to widen or narrow up the items as a whole. If I am double clicked in here on in between the letters, like I would be for the kerning, the tracking, I think over here, isn't going to work. I can move these things around and it's not really doing anything because you have to have two characters highlighted at least to make the kerning, sorry, the tracking work. So now I can move it around. You see once I have two of them highlighted. So at least two highlighted for the tracking and nothing highlighted for the kerning and the whole thing highlighted for the letting because you want everything to go together. You don't have to. You could just set the letting for one of them, but usually you kind of are doing it as a group. If you're trying to make a paragraph here, since there's a period at the end of the sentence, you could do it there to make a division like that. All right. Let's see. Next, we've got the height and width. They modify the height and width of the characters. So when we have just point type like this, I can modify my height. You can see here that it actually just changed the width down to 40.99% as I move the height that way. So it's adjusting the width and the height on that. But when you have area type, it's not as easy to adjust the width and the height. So that's why we have these panels here, because I can come in here and I can say, hey, I want this to be 75% taller. And I want it to be even narrower. And you can see it's all kind of jumbled up on each other, so this is good at this point to know some of the other things like the letting, because I don't want the letting to be 120% of 12 point at this time. I want it to be bigger so these can read these letters. So I took up to 21, and now the spacing between them is far enough apart that I can actually read them. I've lost part of my uh, text here, so be aware of that. That happens in the homework sometimes as well. We're going to be working with kind of boxes like this, and if you see that little red plus sign there, that means that you've lost some of your type, especially if it's not the end of a sentence. So try to make sure you check for that. I don't want to mark you guys down for having missing sentences because you will be using some text that I'm giving you to make a poster. Okay. Next we've got baseline adjustment. Let's see. And we talked about baseline adjustment on the circles like this before. Remember when we had this circle and I said that you could come up here to your um, type on a path options, and you can actually adjust the baseline in here. So it's also possible to adjust baseline from the character panel. So you can see here I can move it in and out so that it's centered or pushed out on one side or the other or inside. Another thing that baseline can be used for is if you wanted to, there are other ways to do this, but you could move something up. So, for example, we've got superscript, and you can put a little T up here. You could also just move it up if you wanted it to be just one letter up that was high and full-sized. You could do that as well and make it go up or down that way. So kind of like using the touch type tool, but it's only moving it in a up and down motion. You're not resizing it or anything like that. But you could go and do that to letters individually in there if you wanted to. Next here is character rotation. Let's see here. So rotation rotates individual characters. You'll see they're all rotating together. You can do a little tiny bit of a fake a little bit of a fake italic like this, but it doesn't look quite right because the letters start dipping underneath the thing. But if you had a font that did not have an italic, You could do a little bit of a fake italic by doing this, and then once you have that, bringing these letters back in with your tracking, so you can pull them back in, make them look closer together. It's not quite like italic though. You'll see it looks a little bit funny, but it is a way that you could kind of get there if you had to. What is next? Next are all these tools, and again, you'll recognize these from up top here. They are some of the similar to the change case ones. We've got all caps and small caps. We'll do that here. All caps, small caps. Now we've got superscript. Superscript obviously doesn't really work when you just have one thing. So if you want to do superscript, oops, a great way to do it is get in here. When you've got something like that, you can actually just highlight the RD for third and put it up like that, and you will have a superscript, TH. There are other ways to put those up there, RD, TH, ST, the little circle for the degrees, all sorts of things can be put up there. And we have another way to do that, which we'll get to in probably another video under the open type panel. But this is one way to use this superscript and bring those up. You might find that on a test in the future, so I just thought I would mention it now. And then subscript would be like H2O, right? You could put that down there and have it be below it. There's also an underline you can have here, and there is a strike through. So if you're showing something you didn't want something to be there, you can do the strike through on it. And at the bottom here we have English, like I showed you earlier, and you can switch to all the other languages like Spanish or Polish, and that allows you to have some of the other, like I said, symbols for the language, depending on what it is. It'll look for corrections based on their words, that kind of thing. And the final thing, which is not highlighting, is A sharp. Why is it not highlighting my font? Seems weird. What if I pick a different font? There it goes. They're both open types. I'm not sure why it wasn't working. But this is for, I think I talked to you about this way back. This is the anti-aliasing method. So I'll change this around, and you really won't see much going on here. I'm going to zoom in on this. What this is for is when you're making JPEGs and whatnot. So remember I've cautioned you about making files and me not being able to read the text because they're too small, too blurry. So when you have, one way to test this before you go out to save file is to do pixel preview up top here under the view menu. And you can see here when I have no anti-aliasing on this particular font, that's what it looks like. It's kind of an 8-bit looking font. I can say sharp, crisp, and strong. So you can play around with those three to see which one best suits your font and makes it legible. When I pull it back like this, is it easier for you to read it when it's like that, or like that, or like that? So a little bit, some of it's eyeballing it, some of it's just general knowledge. You can see here with this particular font, I've got weird spaces between the I and the A, and the N and the O are too close, so I also might want to go into this font after I've picked my thing and maybe bring some of these closer together and send some of them further apart so they're not touching. That kind of thing. Play around with it, try to make it look nice. Consider this stuff when you're working on your homework as well. I'm not a super stickler for it, but if I do see a lot of letters jammed up against each other, not looking even, you might lose some points for the prettiness of your layout and that kind of thing. Let's see, what else do we have on here? Anything? It says here, note, the character panel contains formatting that can be applied to groups of characters from one character to several characters to all characters in an area type object, or future characters typed at the position of the insertion point. What does that mean? That means that if I'm on this rotation one here, or even if I'm not on something, let's say I'm just going to go over to type here on the type. I'm going to pick small caps, not superscript, but strike through and 18 point, and I click here and I start typing. You can see already the lorem ipsum has a strike through on it. It's got the rotation on it. It's in small caps. So for future, you can set this up and then type, and it will go to the future type ones. If I go into something like this and start typing, it's just going to copy whatever font that I was in. When I leave it, it remembers that font. Until I click off of it, now you'll see it's back on this one that I had saved. So it doesn't hold necessarily the last thing that you did. It holds what it has in here. Excuse me, I just hit my microphone. And you could also copy and paste things with your eyedropper tool because it takes characters. So I could say, click here, put that here. You know, oh, I gotta hold the Alt Option key. There you go. So I took that one and added it to that one. Changed it. All right. I think that is all for this video. Our next video will be dealing with paragraph panel options and the open type panel as well. All right, so I will see you in that video.